Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second in our series of mining webinars that are taking place as a prelude to the Arab African Mining Conference that's taking place in September. My name is Hussein Alawi. I'm the Chief Executive of Frontier Exchange, the organizer of the Arab African Mining Conference, together with our partners, Core International, that have developed the iMine platform. In line with the mission of Arab African mining, these webinars have been established to promote investment into high potential mining countries within Africa and the Middle East, of which of course Guinea is no exception. And we hope really these sessions, such as the one you're watching today, will ensure the global mining community is kept up to date with all the latest developments and opportunities across mining in Africa and the Middle East during this pandemic. Obviously, we can't meet in person, but we can certainly discuss virtually. And so that we hope that the content we're providing to you today will be of use really to yourself and to your business. Today, we're discussing Guinean mining now and post COVID-19. It's a great pleasure to welcome today the Honourable Minister of Mines and Geology, His Excellency Abdoulaye Magasuba, who will be joining us later on in the webinar as a keynote speaker. The Honourable Minister is being joined on our distinguished panel by two of the most active mining companies in Guinea. His Excellency Mamadi Yula, who is CEO of Nimba Iron, and Mr. Berner Pryor, who is CEO of Alufa Mining. Today's session will be moderated by Mr. Mohamed Condé, who is Country Director for Guinea at the UK Department for International Trade. Many thanks, Mohamed, for your support today and for moderating the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, the webinar today is really acting as a precursor to the 4th edition of the Arab African Mining Conference. That's being held online this year as a result of COVID-19 between the 28th and the 30th of September. The website for all our attendees that are interested potentially in joining the conference is arabafricanmining.com. And if you are interested in joining that conference, please do reach out to the organizers today and we'll be happy to pass on further details about that event. Of course, we hope all our panelists and participants will join the conference, which will certainly have participation from at least 15 African and Middle Eastern government across the 3 days of the digital event. But in the meantime, I really hope you enjoyed today's session, which personally I, for one, am very excited to learn from, considering the outstanding geology of Guinea. And with that, I'd love to hand over to Mr. Mohamed to run today's proceedings. Thank you very much indeed.
Great. Thank you very much, Hussein, for that. And hello and welcome to everyone. Today's session is basically going to be on Guinea mining now and post-COVID. My name is Mohamed Condé and I'll be your moderator. So I'm the UK Department for International Trade Country Director in Guinea, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today. The webinar will focus basically on challenges within and opportunities within Guinea mining during this pandemic. We do have a slight delay in obviously the Honourable Minister of Mines joining us, which we hope won't be too long. However, what would happen is I think at this point, I'll just literally give you a quick brief overview of who we have on our panel today, because I think we have a great wealth of experience between the three panelists that we have. And then we will have Mr. Berner Pryor take us through some of what they're doing with Alufa Mining, and then we'll hand over to His Excellency Mamadi Yula to give us some of his words on the mining environment in Guinea. And I think from that point on, we'd have a couple of questions that we have for them to give us some more insights onto what's happening. And then we'll be able to take questions from the public, and hopefully we'll all come out of it satisfied. So the first panelist that we have is His Excellency Abdoulaye Magasuba, Minister of Mines and Geology of Guinea. So appointed minister on January 4th, 2016. He's an economist with extensive experience in key sectors in the Guinean economy, including obviously mining, energy, health, and agriculture. He has since then led reforms, challenging reforms in the Guinean mining sector, including updating the mining cadastre, which has been modernized, reducing bureaucracy in obtaining mining permits, and also facilitating the creation of a one-stop shop. amongst other things. So essentially, he's facilitated the use as well of shared infrastructure by the country's top mining companies, as seen by GAC and CBG and Rusal in the Bokeh region. So just a bit of background. And the second panelist that we have is Excellency Mamadi Yula, a former Prime Minister, a highly experienced mining executive, having been the CEO of GAC from June 2004 to December 2015. GAC is basically a subsidiary of the Emirates Global Aluminium and operates in the Sangaredi bauxite mine located in Northwest Guinea and related rail and port infrastructure. Mr. Yula was instrumental in overseeing the construction and operation of the $1.4 billion project, which was one of the largest greenfield investments in Guinea. He served as Prime Minister between December 2015 to May 2018, a period during which Guinea achieved extraordinary economic growth greater than 10% and registered a record level foreign direct investment and completed reforms as part of the IMF and World Bank. And our final panelist, last but not least, is Mr. Berner Pryor, a metallurgical engineer by background with over 35 years experience in the international mining industry. He's held senior executive positions across a range of disciplines, including project acquisition, evaluation, development, and construction, and has run large-scale, fully operational mining assets. His experience also includes international commercial, general management, most notably in Australia, Brazil, West and Southern Africa, the Middle East, and Russia. Prior to becoming CEO of Alifer, he was CEO of African Minerals Limited and Q Resources PLC. Between 2006 and 2010, he held senior positions within Anglo-American PLC as head of business development and was CEO of Anglo Ferrous Brazil Inc. So before I hand over the mic to our panelists, I have a few housekeeping rules items to cover. Obviously, this webinar will be available on YouTube, and I think you will get an email notification that will allow you to go over and review it if you want to. Obviously, we would love to hear from you. If you have any questions at the end, please send them through, and hopefully, time allowing, we'll be able to cover them. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming all our panelists and handing over to Mr. Pryor. Thank you. I think you are on mute.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Look forward to obviously saying hello to His Excellency Minister when he joins. And of course, very happy to see my friend, His Excellency Mamadi Yula, who we haven't seen each other for a few months. So hopefully we can see each other soon. I do have a few slides that I want to talk about Alifer mining and what we've been doing with the coronavirus here in Guinea, and also how that affects us as a global enterprise in terms of us selling our bauxite material around the world, and how we're also managing our affairs through our offices in London and elsewhere. It's obviously a remarkable and weird situation that this planet finds itself in. You know, I'm living in a country that we've had 45,000 deaths from this coronavirus, which is an astonishing number and really quite scary. I'm sitting in my home, in my study, where I've worked for the last 17 weeks, not been going to my office. I could never have imagined such a scenario ever in my life, and I don't think that's been the situation probably since maybe the constraints put on the movement of people since the Second World War. We've in terms of in Guinea, it was absolutely our priority, and I do have some slides. If they are able to be put up onto the screen, I'll be very grateful, if that's possible. Thank you, Suman. If I can move on to the second slide. You know, our top priority for all of our people is to have the health and safety of our employees at the forefront. We are obviously very keenly aware of safety in mining, but here health has taken the priority. We looked very early on, in the very early stages of mitigating the spread of COVID at our mine to protect our workforce. And we took significant steps in February of this year, way before any lockdown in Europe or lockdown in Guinea for moving our people. And we did this to protect our workforce should we get coronavirus affecting us at Bel Air, which is very close to Boffa. I can pleased to say that we haven't lost 1 ton of operations or sales of our bauxite during this whole period up to today. I think it's a testament to the team on site to have maintained the production at maximum level, and despite us actually having a number of coronavirus cases at our mine, which I will address shortly. If I can go on to the next, thank you. The 3 challenges that we had is protecting our workforce from a health point of view. We put in very strict protocols. We followed the government of Guinea's advice at every step. That's been extremely helpful. We employed hand washing, temperature checks, social distancing from a very early stage. We did other things like we closed our canteen so people didn't sit and eat with each other. It was takeaways for breakfast, lunch and dinner. We reduced the number of people on site. Before the lockdown in Guinea, we took out people who may have got medical conditions should they have got coronavirus. And we spent a lot of money on providing PPE for the whole site. That was all prevention. Then we wanted to ensure that should we have any employee who tests positive, that we could manage this. So we set up 8 isolation units, 2 of which became intensive care units. We have 5 ventilators. We ordered extra medical supplies, and we put all very clear medevac procedures should we need to expatriate any of our workers to either to Conakry or internationally. And we've actually done that in 2 cases. Whilst I mentioned we were very good on our production maintaining throughout this time, the other challenges was moving of equipment into Guinea, spares and consumables. This also continued, but it was slower than normal, which you would expect, getting goods through the port or through the airport with all the controls that were needed. But nevertheless, I have to say that the government and the government departments have been extremely helpful in allowing us to operate. The biggest challenge, of course, is the 3rd point on that slide, is travel restrictions, rotating, moving our staff from the mine to Conakry. There were restrictions and still are moving in and out of Conakry. We had to manage that. And of course, rotation of our expatriate workforce to their home sites. And we actually got to a point a week ago that our expatriates had worked, all of them had worked 120 days without a break, as they could not and still can't easily travel to their home. If I can move on to the next slide. You'll see a photograph here of our medical team at the top. We did fly in a 2nd doctor to give us support, because if our doctor on site did become ill, we would have a problem continuing with operations. And that picture on the bottom shows you one of our medical units, isolation units that we've got on the mine. Go to the next slide. Just before I go on to the communities, should say that we did have 12 cases of coronavirus in our workforce, 4 in Conakry and 8 on the mine. Only 1 of those 12 showed symptoms. All the other 11 were asymptomatic. We kept them all in isolation for the statutory period of time. They've all come out now negative and recovered and are all back at work. And we haven't had 1 case of coronavirus on our mine for the past 3.5 weeks. That's, I think, the result of our procedures, our tight controls of movement of people in and out of our mine and our camp, and people abiding by everything that we need to do properly from this unbelievable disease that we have. On the slide here, the challenges, we realize that not only the workforce, but we're very engaged with our communities. We have some 25,000 people who live on our license. We provide them with a lot of equipment so that they could also stay healthy. We developed a much closer working relationship with ANSS, who have been exceptionally helpful when we've had to bring people in and out of our site. On the market, I think we can say that the macro, the side of it, bauxite prices have come off in the last few months. I think that is a result of perhaps predicted lower aluminium demand, albeit China is still buying every ton of bauxite, and so volumes are staying there, but the prices have come off. Freight rates clearly have been a roller coaster ride. We had the beginning of the year freight rates of some $17 a ton. They dropped to $8 a ton in March, which was wonderful for the operators. But the Chinese obviously then wanted lower prices to sell the bauxite, and those freight rates have now gone back up nearly to $18 a ton. So it's been a full price roller coaster in the last 3 months. If I move on to, I think, next slide, you'll see here the community contributions. We spent $117,000 on helping all the communities with sanitary kits and hygiene products, thousands of masks, rapid screening tests, and training for the medical staff on how to utilize this equipment and keep the community safe. There's been a fantastic response from the community in this, and they've taken that on, and they really do use all this PPE kit and the washing that they need to do. And I think we're seeing the effects of much lower cases of coronavirus in our vicinity. We also have purchased a COVID PCR testing machine between ourselves and our shipping contractor SMT, which we will be donating to the government when it arrives in country in I think about 2 weeks' time. I think that is probably the conclusion of my slides. There's one more just showing you that we're committed to this. It's really, I was never trained to be a coronavirus expert. I was never trained to manage a mine from thousands of miles away. And that has had its challenges. And one of the biggest challenges I've had to face is really the mental well-being of my workforce. People on site can't get to see their families in Conakry, or can't get to see their families at the home, and they don't know when they're going to do that. It's not easy. And we ask them to come to work every day, to work hard, to continue doing that. And we try to provide them with all the mental health support that they need in difficult times. And we do have some challenges in that with some people who struggle with really living in a bubble and isolated and don't know actually when they can get back. So we hope that we, all around the world, we can control this virus to an extent that the border controls can be lifted, commercial flights can then work, and there'd be freedom of movement. I think there's no doubt in my mind that when we do lift these lockdowns, there will be spikes and they're going to be managed. That we're seeing that in Australia and Melbourne. There is small spikes here in the UK. America has significant challenges, and this virus sadly is here to stay, and we've got to learn to live with it and learn to help our fellow beings and make sure that we all stay safe. We've done it on the mine, and now we've got to do that as the human nation across various countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernie. That's great. And it's fantastic to see that we have His Excellency Minister Abdoulaye Magasuba on the line as well, who I think will hand over to for him to perhaps give us a bit of an overview of the mining climate in Guinea. So Minister, if you would like to please take over and please give us a bit of context, because obviously over the last few weeks, despite COVID-19, we've seen some movements such as the Simandu projects going on. So if you can give us a quick overview, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. It's having this outbreak has been an important challenge for the mining industry in Guinea. But we, as you know, we used to face, we've been facing the Ebola crisis in 2004, 2005, 2014, 2015. And the health system was maybe a bit more prepared to face this epidemic. But for the mining industry, we are going through a very important, moment, I would say, because we have a very good momentum for the development of the mining industry. And having this outbreak was a bit of a challenge for us. We were somehow nervous about how the mining industry can resist to the outbreak and get through the outbreak, and while keeping the momentum. And the initial action we took was to assess the situation, hearing from mining companies what was that was in early March. What would be the potential impact on the operations? What are the actual impact on the all the operations that were happening in within the mining the operation areas? And after that, we quickly took measures to preserve health safety for our workers, and we had the same also applied within the mining companies as minimum measures that we strongly recommend, in addition to measures that were already taken by health services. And then we had to, of course, reassess somehow the forecast for this year, and also start working on the forecast for the coming years in terms of midterm impact of the epidemic. We were very happy somehow that despite the difficulties the mining companies were facing, they all were confirmed somehow their commitments in terms of the extent of the operations, current operations, and how they were contemplating the end of the operations at the end of the year. And that was first good news for us, but we needed to be very vigilant and make sure that all the challenges mining companies have raised, we can face them as quickly as possible. One of the challenges were how to somehow allow the staff to come in and go out from the country while being compliant with health measures that were in place. So we had exceptional measures for mining companies that did allow them from April on to start having charter flights with all the safety measures that were in place. that did help us keep the mining companies getting the stuff they needed to keep going with their operations. The cargo were also involved in those measures, and the cargo were allowed, so that did also help the mining companies to ship goods and also ship goods in and also ship their production abroad. And overall, we are so far confident that the short-term effect will be very limited. The medium-term effect, as Bernie was somehow referring to, it's not completely clear so far, because what is happening downstream, we need to see how that fits in the upstream business. But on that front too, we are working hard with mining companies to make sure that we support them in the process of facing of keeping the level of operations. Of course, as a government, we are trying to, as much as possible, to accelerate on new projects, so that in case in the midterm we have an impact, a meaningful impact, that impact, negative impact, would be compensated by the new activities that would have been created. And Simandu is part of that process, thanks to the fact that we were already in the tender process. So the timing was very good to conclude in the negotiations that we were having with the company for 6 months, I would say. And now that is also that creates an additional hope that if there is anything, at least we would keep the pace in the development of the mining industry. But of course, we are confident, but also very vigilant about what's happening in the international market, and mainly what is happening in the downstream industries, and how that will have an impact on our production in Guinea.
That is just fantastic. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. That's a great insight into what's some of the activities happening in Guinea, and I'm sure we'll come back to you again. So my suggestion to the audience would be, if you have any questions, please write them down in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens, and we'll make sure we pick out the best questions to have them answered. So I'm going to move to His Excellency Mamadi Yula, who is obviously in mining, fully involved in a project that is working on obviously heading towards production, SMFG, who are in the Nimba area. So His Excellency, would you like to give us some words in terms of the overview, how the pandemic has basically affected your plans, and give us a context from your understanding?
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. I would like first to greet my other panelists in this webinar, the Minister Magasuba and my friend Bernie, that I haven't seen for a while. And I would like to give you, and all the other participants, of course, sorry for that. And I would like to give quite a different perspective from what we just heard, specifically from Bernie, for example. As you know, the Nimba project is not at the same level, because you mentioned the GAC project, which is now in operation. And that's the same case for Alifer. They are now in operation. But for the Nimba project, the situation is quite different, because the new owners actually signed an agreement with the government of Guinea in late September 2019. And we're just, starting the process of reviewing all the steps of implementing a new project. This includes to review all these existing studies and to start new studies. And among these studies, there is one which is very, very important for this project. It is the environmental and social impact assessment. Because as you know, this the mining area of the Nimba project is very close to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And for that reason, the ESIA is very critical for this project, because we aim to operate at a very high standard for this project. That's what the former owner was doing, and the new owner are committed to do the same. And when we had this pandemic, it was a very, very difficult situation for someone who just started with a project, because you have just an example to give you a perspective. We signed a contract with some of these consultants to, to update some of the studies as impacted the environmental and social impact assessment. And suddenly the contract being signed, the work started, and we had the team that cannot travel to come to site. And most of this study cannot be implemented without visiting the site. This is just one example to give you a perspective. But despite of this situation, we have been trying hard to maintain the level of our activities by doing what we're doing now, working through video conference. We are spending a lot of time in this video conferencing now, and most of yesterday I almost spent the whole day in different video conference, and that's what we put in place very quickly in order to continue to work as a team, for the company, but also with our different consultants. But today we are for some of this activity, we are reaching the point where we need to bring people on site, and this is one of the challenges we are facing now. And I know that the minister just mentioned the effort that they're also doing in order to bring this situation back, let's say, to normal. But there are still, I think, a long way to go, because even if some of these restrictions have started to be removed, but there is a lot of things to do in order to to bring people to site, to bring some of our experts, some of our consultants to visit the site in order to to do their work. So the challenges for us today is first to be able to resume the activity that for the main part of this activity is on hold, and also to look at the the near future. The minister mentioned that in his address, and we have to, because today when we started this project, which is actually quite recent, and the economy at the time is absolutely not the same today. We have the context have dramatically changed. We had the severe decrease in the world activity. The global demand has fallen. We have some. We don't know what's going on in some of this international market or the commodity market, and all this have to be taken into consideration to make sure that the commitment taken by the investors, those who are bringing money to support this project, can still be confident enough to continue, investing in our country, in Guinea. And that's one of the challenges we have to face. And we need to work with the government of Guinea together to see how to address these challenges. And we have also, as Bernie mentioned, and we have implemented the same kind of measure in our side to make sure that our people are in safety. And we have reorganized the work by introducing a very strict protocol, by implementing a rotation, for example, to reduce the number of people on site at the same time. This is kind of measure we also implemented in a very difficult context, because you can imagine when you are in a development stage and you don't have a revenue, so you have to spend more money with a perspective which is not absolutely not clear. I would like to just stop my comment here, and if there is any specific question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
His Excellency, thank you very much. Indeed, we would all agree that though we are all facing the same pandemic, but institutions being at different stages of their life cycles, it's clear that the impact is felt differently. And thank you for giving us a different insight, which is fantastic. So with time, the topics are so interesting for me, and I'm sure it'll be the same for everyone else watching us. We do have some questions that have come in. Some of them are specifically addressed to certain individuals. Now, I think the first one that we'll pick out is, would go for the Honorable Minister Magasuba. What lessons has the Guinean government learned from COVID-19? So going forward, what contingency plan have been developed to alleviate the socio-economic consequences of unprecedented pandemic in the future? So I guess, though it talks about the economy in general, but we would be perhaps expecting your answers from a mining point of view.
Yeah, what the main lesson we've learned from this pandemic is that, and you can see it in what Mr. Yula and what Bernie said. It depends on at which stage the project or the company is. The impact depends mainly on that. So for us to accelerate the development of different projects, it will improve the resilience of the mining sector somehow. Because you have a well-established, if you have a well-established operation with its medium or long-term contracts, it's more, the company is less exposed to the effect of any pandemic. That is the first thing. The second, going forward, is also about the need for us to accelerate the implementation of our diversification policy. Because gold is doing fairly well, which is not the case for some other minerals. So had we had maybe 60% or 70% of our production made of gold, we would have been in a very different situation. We would be, and I wouldn't say happy, but at least the mining sector would even grow faster, would have grown faster in this period. So it depends on when the company's activities stand. It's also important for us to continue the diversification of our production, just to make sure that we overall improve the level of resilience of the mining industry. And going forward, that's the lesson we've learned. And in terms of contingency plan, the best contingency plan is being as resilient as possible, because there are things you have no control on, because this pandemic didn't start from Guinea, by Guinea, and we had no and we still have no control on what's happening on the global markets due to this pandemic. So we need to create as much resilience as possible for the mining industry to get its way out, no matter what is the severity of the pandemic.
Great. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think resilience is what we need to remember there. It is true that this pandemic needs a global solution because it is one, sadly, that is international, global, and for us to get back to the status quo would need perhaps to have some form of global solution to it. I think the other question that we have, we'll probably head over to Mr. Pryor. Alifer, quite loads of interesting questions for you. The first one would be, what were the challenges in setting business in Guinea? Obviously, you are not without knowing that Alifer is one of the success stories in Guinea. So it's quite interesting to get your view on that.
Look, thanks for that question. The setting up any project in any country has lots of challenges. You not only have to work with your stakeholders, the governments, the communities, which give you your social license to operate. You have to build up your workforce. We started with 10 people in our workforce 5 years ago. We've now got 1,800. You've got to have the right skill sets. You've got to train people. And of course, the shareholders want us to produce production as quickly as possible to get the revenues as high as possible. And your time is not on your side. So the challenges are time, I think, is the biggest thing for everybody. The shorter you can do things, the more efficient and the better the operation comes. The challenge with doing things quicker is you make more mistakes. So the challenge is trying to make the least mistakes in the quickest amount of time possible. Guinea I've worked in many countries around the world, and I'm not saying that because my friend, His Excellency, the Minister, is listening, but working with the government of Guinea has been really, really a pleasure. They've been so supportive of us, and it's not the same in many other countries. So you need that as a platform to be able to grow for a greenfield project like Alifer. That's really getting yourself as structurally right, let alone all the technical challenges of building a port or building roads or getting equipment to site. They're normal to every mining project in the world. So lots of challenges. The Minister just talked about resilience. I add to that, not only because of coronavirus, two other important things for us to learn. I think we're learning it more with coronavirus, is to have more patience and to be more tolerant. It's so much harder to manage like we are from our homes or our personal offices than we are seeing people face to face. And it's harder to do that, and you just need more tolerance of each other and respect more for each other. And I actually think, to be honest, this coronavirus there's some real positive lessons to be learned from this, and we must remember them and take those good bits away, because there's a lot of bad bits about the coronavirus, but there's lots of good bits too.
Absolutely. I think COVID-19 is a sad case. It's been challenging in many ways, but it's also brought out the genius in all of us. Having to do webinars like this one is basically an example of the fact that we cannot let this pandemic basically get to stand the world still. So thank you very much for that, Bernie. There are other questions I'm sure I'll come back to you on. So if I go around to His Excellency Mamadi Yula, this is basically a general question, but I thought it would be ideal to have you, since obviously Nimba is in a strategic location, almost between three countries. So the question is, how are these mining companies impacting on rural communities in Guinea? Are there really established connections between leaders of these communities and the company's leaders? Because I know obviously NIMBA, the project itself has done extensive studies on how to preserve the environment. So what are your relations like with the community around the NIMBA area? His Excellency, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question. And I was saying that today you cannot imagine doing a project of a certain magnitude without implementing an ESIA, environmental and social impact assessment. And I said environmental and social because when you come to an area, in a region, in any location where you find people living there, and as an investor, you come there to bring something new, because when you decide to go there, it's a decision that you took the time to review many criteria to make sure that you are a businessman, you want to invest and get your money back. But doing so, if you are a responsible investor, you have to know how to deal with the local stakeholders, people living in that area. So today, I think it's now becoming a common practice to assess the best way to deal with this local people, the local community, including the local environment, everything that live there, that you found there. Your mission as investor, as a responsible investor, is to implement your investment by at least not disturbing the local people, but at best to bring something to add to what they have before you come to that area. That's the the philosophy. I will summarize the philosophy of this interaction with the local community, and that's what we have been doing. And you know that before the new owner take this company, it was run before by B.F. Billiton, which is well known to be one of the company with the highest standard in implementing a mining project all around the world. So the new owner are keen to continue to that same level of standard. And what I found when I joined this company as a CEO is the same. I was very happy to see that the relationship between the management team, the staff with the local community were very good. There were very good relationship between them. And that's the main reason for that is we maintain a very high quality interaction with this community. And that's what we will continue. And I will tell you, for example, when this the agreement was signed with the government of Guinea, the investor decided to launch 3 agricultural and rural local development project, which is not directly linked to the mining activity. This is a decision by the investor who came to say that I want, in parallel to my mining operation, to develop agricultural project, 3 agricultural projects in that region, so that to give the local people the opportunity to have jobs, to have revenue. So that's what I can say about to respond to your question.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. That is fantastic. So if I now turn to the Honorable Minister Magasuba, I've basically got another question here concerning the lockdown. Is it allowing you more time to develop collaborative regional development initiatives in advance of new mines and mining regions opening up? Sorry, you're on mute.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was a bit distracted. Yeah. Can you?
Okay. So is this lockdown allowing you more time to develop collaborative regional development initiatives in advance of new mines and mining regions opening up?
I would say that in terms of conceptual work, this is giving us more time. But in terms of ground implementation, of course, based on all the challenges we're facing, it's not easy to progress on that front. So what we somehow adjusted our organization accordingly. How we get progress more on internal reforms, how we on different impactful projects, how we can progress as much as possible on the conceptual part of the project. That's what we've been doing so far. But now with more knowledge around the COVID-19, I think we can now have more presence on the ground with in a very safe environment. But so far it's been a challenge to make some progress on the ground. And for mining companies, for many of them, since they are in a very remote areas, so they were able, as Bernie was saying at the beginning, to keep their staff on site, despite all the, let's say, I would say, psychological challenges, all the stress that goes with that. But for us, the main focus has been how to support mining companies on one end, and how to make progress on our internal reforms so that we kick somehow the ground running when the pandemic is over, and also how to progress on a very important project in terms of regional development, local content. On the conceptual level, we are making some progress on that front.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Bernie, I have tons of questions for you. I think Alifer is stemming loads of questions. So I'll probably give them in a sequence and try to sum them up. So the first one is really the fact that you say that, you know, COVID is here to stay. Is it more sustainable to invest in more durable hand washing kits? That's one. And I think another one also refers to, are there any plans to appoint any Guinean nationals at board level? And the final one comes back to your point of on your website, in the public commitment register progress track of February 2020, it mentions that a local development fund and community development agreements will be established. So they would like to find out in practical terms, could you confirm whether this project has been established, and what are some of the success stories on that, and what were some of the main challenges? Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed, for those three questions, and I'll take them in that order. Interesting question about more durable washing facilities if COVID's here to stay. I think the efforts that the world is putting into is looking for vaccines and be preventative from that. I think vaccines go hand in hand with understanding immunity, and the medical profession is clearly not there yet. There's hopeful that some news that might be one by the end of the year, but all the experts are saying it normally takes 18 months for a proper vaccine to be developed, and I think we're really only in the first 6 months. In terms of durable washing, I think there's recycling masks. Can we recycle masks? I think is a key thing, because a lot of them are made out of plastic. There's tens of thousands of millions being used a day and then being thrown away. That's not really environmentally very sensible. So is there a way we can reuse these masks that I think will become a lot more of the norm. The news here in the United Kingdom is that from next week, everybody has to wear masks if they go outside their home. So that's again millions and millions of these masks. Washing, I think it's clearly that washing hands regularly is a great avoider of contamination and getting the virus. So I'm not sure it's durable washing equipment, but I think it's recycling what equipment we do use and using the equipment in the best way. The second question about Guineans to our board. We already do have Guineans on our board of Bel Air Mining in Guinea, both representatives from the government and representatives from ourselves. Our workforce is 97% Guinean, but it's absolute commitment by myself and to ensure that we have more Guineans in senior management roles and have more Guineans at the board. We're still a young company. We're only in our second year of full production as it evolves from a construction company into operations. And I think we've made great strides, but we're not there yet. And there's a lot more training right through the organization to get Guineans into senior operational roles on site. Unfortunately, COVID has stopped that training program, which is a great shame, but as soon as we can, we will start that up again. So it's a commitment by me that we'll have more Guineans in senior management roles and on the board. And your last one on the local development fund, I am very pleased. This is a statutory requirement set by the mining code that there will be contributions to a local development fund. We have made the first payment to that. And I think, Minister, I think you were present for that payment when we gave a check across to yourself and the communities near to our mine site. And the second payment is due very soon. So that local development fund structure is in place. Payments are being made into that fund. And now, of course, the government with the local authorities have to work through the best use of that funds for the local communities.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Bernie. Sorry, I threw a marathon of questions at you at the same time. Moving over to His Excellency Mamadi Yula. There's a question here which is kind of difficult to answer in these circumstances. It's basically, is there a time frame for your project to be executed? Because they say the population is sometimes told the same things over and over, but once the project starts, they do not see anything. And so yeah, what are your estimates? What can you give us? Because I work a bit in mining as well with mining companies, so I know it's not as easy as what we see. So what's your take on that?
If I well understood, the question is that when the project start, right? Okay. Thank you for that. As you know, certainly most of you here know how difficult to answer this question is, because the project is a very complex process. When you want to implement a project, because I understand that being involved in this, we understand the challenges, but the general people, the general population don't have the same information. So when someone decides to put his money, because when you sign an agreement with the government of Guinea, the Minister of Mine is here to confirm that. This automatically implies a lot of spending. You spend a lot of money when you start a project. So I think that no one in this world can start spending money if in your mind you are not able, or you don't have any idea when you will start. Because to get your money back, you have to implement the project and to start to build it and to start operating it before getting back any penny from that operation. So to answer this question, we have a clear schedule for this project. This is have been discussed with the minister at the time of signing the agreement. This takes some, because the two aspects were discussed, an early production project and the, you know, the, let's say the second phase project, which is actually the big and the real, the long-term project. And the early production is very challenging because of the World Heritage side. And the minister is here. I came to him last week with concern that was raised by some international body, namely the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, who came to us and raised a very strong concern about our project, saying that, even mentioning that maybe we shouldn't implement a mining project in that area, just to give you an idea. And that was a direct link to the early production, because to implement an early production, there is no way doing it by haulage with trucks. So trucking ore in that area is very challenging, because we are, as I mentioned before, in a World Heritage site, very close to a World Heritage site, where we have endangered species. And this is the situation. But despite of that, we are working hard to meet the commitment that we took with the government of Guinea to start this project as soon as possible. The early project is a very challenging, and we are in a discussion. We have a board meeting next week where we will discuss with the minister. He is a member of our board, and we will discuss some of this question during that board meeting, and to see how to handle this question. Is a very sensitive. For the big project, which is which need a lot of building to build a railroad, to build bridges, to build a port facility to export this. This will take at least 3 to 4 years to be completed. That's the answer that I can give you. Just to answer I know that it's not maybe that what expecting, because people were thinking about as the sooner this they can see the operation starting on site. But as mentioned before, you cannot start a project today, major project, without conducting an ESIA, if you are a responsible investor. So that's what we're doing, and we are committed to do that, and we are committed to do things well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, His Excellency. I think patience and also taking into account studies that need to happen by being responsible definitely are key factors that have to be considered. And I think this answers some of the questions that came on the environment and the chimpanzees in Western Guinea. So I think these are elements that are being factored in, and you're not able to go as quick as you would want. So if I go to the Honorable Minister Abdoulaye Magasuba on a question, this basically is with will big infrastructure projects such as the Simandu and the railway and port associated to it be delayed by the pandemic? Do you think it could delay the progress of that project?
So far, I don't think. And the company that with which we've signed the convention have already started mobilizing people to start the studies, and so far we don't expect any delay due to the pandemic so far.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we are heading towards wrapping up. There's one question that's really captivated my attention, because by reading it, I kind of see myself. It's from a young Guinean studying abroad. And I think the question is for all three panelists to kindly give us their views. So it says, as a young Guinean studying abroad, I think we need more of these kind of initiatives to enable young generations to be informed on the country's issues and challenges. I'd love to ask the panelists a question regarding the opportunities and skills needed in the Guinean mining industry for young Guineans like myself, hoping that my questions basically will sort of guide what are the kind of skills that they need in order to be able to excel in the Guinean mining sector. So it's open to all panelists.
I would jump in. What I would say is that in most of the cases, a mining project is an integrated project. Actually, for bulk commodities, what we observe in Guinea here, 2/3 of the investment is not in mining. It's mainly in infrastructure with everything that you can put with that, the railway, the road support, and you can have all sorts of skills that are required in that in the framework of the mining project itself. The second thing is apart from the mining project itself, so the mining part and the infrastructure part, you have activities that are created around the mining area, be during the development and construction phase or during the operation phase. And you have many people that converge to these mining areas. They need to get access to food, accommodation, and many other services or goods. So you somehow, if you take the first, the second, and maybe the third layer, you are embracing somehow the whole economy. So what is important is to make sure that you target very well where you wanna exercise your professional activity, and be the best in that domain. And it can be in technical in the technical part, as engineers are needed in the whole process. People, experts in environment, as you've seen it for the Nimba project, for example, are needed. Economists are needed, and we have some additional activities that are also created when the company starts producing. Bernie was referring to the local development fund. And when that local, the funds are spent in that local development fund, it creates opportunities for profit generating activities. It creates opportunities for social investments within communities. So it's a large range of opportunities that are created within and around mining projects. So it's very important to have that in mind. And I think that the best way to, the short answer to this is choose where you wanna, in which area you wanna work, and find its place within all this environment of the mining industry, and be the best in that domain, so that you can have a good job and have a great career.
Thank you. So if we take words from His Excellency Mamadioula, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Minister Magat. Yes, that's right. You have first to, be prepared. Because we are in the mining industry, even in Guinea, and the standard is almost an international standard. So the skill that are required are international skill at at highest levels. So if you are a well-educated young Guinean, and you will have the opportunity to to join this mining family in Guinea. But I think that to some extent, I will say, sometimes we have to be a little bit ambitious and proactive if we want to facilitate at least a good communication, and we can go beyond that. And I want to just recall what we did in GAC some years ago when I was that company. I remember that we decided to prepare, young Guinean to be part of this project at not only at the lowest level, but at at the medium and even for some of them high in the higher position. And the way we did that, we arranged for first to the search for young Guinean everywhere in the world. The announcement were made in internet. So everywhere you are you can participate in send your application and participate in this program. And we give that opportunity to all the Guineans, because I remember that I personally organized many interviews through it was we were using for example this internet interview with candidates in Europe, even in the USA at the time, young Guinean living there and wanting to come back after their the study, and we give them that opportunity. And when they came, because this program was a very well organized program, because we decided every year during we did that 3 years before I leave GAC, and we started in 2013. We did it in 2014 and 2015, and I left GAC in December 2015. So this 3 years before that, we had 20 young Guineans sent to the company of the shareholders, where they spent 1 year training to be put in position to acquire the necessary skill, not just to say, but they work in the company in a position that they will come back again to take in the Guinea Alumina project. And this had today, if you go to GAC, you can see the result of this ambitious and proactive program.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that great insight. I think that answers some of the questions on education and that. So if we take Bernie's point on that, as a staunch engineer, knowing all about metals, are your footsteps the right one to follow? Or what are your views on this?
Look, I agree with all the comments from the other panelists on this. We at Alifair, we've probably got 50 different types of skills that we employ. The Honourable Minister is right. You've got people in finance, admin, drivers, engineers, geologists. There's a huge range of skills that a mine needs to employ. But in answer to the gentleman who wrote the question, the young Guinean, what we want to see when we employ people is we will provide opportunities. We want to see people grow in our company to become managers and senior managers. That's not just having the skill in your chosen path, but it's having the desire to learn, the desire to work hard, and desire to be part of a team. So it's having the right, what I call not the skill sets, but the right attitude to be able to grow within a company. They're the people we're looking for. There's lots out there, and certainly we will employ more of those people.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think we're stretched for time. We could go on forever. Mining is intriguing myself.
Sorry, can I add something?
Yes.
I think it's also important to not only see opportunities in the mining sector as being restricted to being employed. So we also have a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities in the mining industry. And we ran a study in the mining industry here a couple of years ago. And 11 sectors industries were identified as being having a very good potential for entrepreneurship in the mining, within or around the mining industry. So it's very important for young professionals to not only think about using their skills as employees, but also using their skills as business owners and providing them more empowerment, economic empowerment that will create even more wealth around the country. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that point is instrumental, because it is vital to remember that mining companies can only recruit a handful number of people, with loads of activities being automated. Yet you have endless opportunities to be an entrepreneur and work very well with them, and perhaps excel beyond those that may be working for the mining companies. So thank you very much. And I think that answers some of the questions that we couldn't get to. I think we'll probably bring the webinar to a close. We're 16 minutes over time. Thank you very much to all our panelists. It was fantastic and a big learning curve for myself. I had a terrific time on this webinar, and I hope most of your questions were answered. Please accept apologies for the ones that were not, who were stretched for time. I hope the interactions were as informing for you as they were for me. And thank you very much for your time. With your permission, I think we'd like to bring the session to a close. Thank you to all our panelists and all participants.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.